Welcome to episode 6 of this Year in Review series where I'm covering 22 things that happened during the year 2022 as we count down to 23. In one of the earlier episodes, episode 4, we spoke about Year in Search where we looked at how Google has examined and compiled the data of what the world is looking for. That's a treasure trove of information and you can go and watch episode 4. Right now, the focus is on one of the two things that we covered in that episode. Just to do a very quick recap, Google's year in search report, essentially I broke it down into two components. The first component was what are the things that people are looking for? The names, the celebrities, the events. What is more important is what people want to do. And the intent of what people want to do is very well captured in Google these days because you don't ask your friends or family or your social circles anymore. The first thing that you do when you want to change anything or you want to do anything is ask Google. So Google has been keeping track of everything that the world has been asking for right through the year, and they have compiled this for you. What we will do today is deep dive into whatever people were looking for in terms of what they want to do. As I mentioned earlier in episode 4, the central theme of what people want to do this year is can I change? And that's what we are going to deal with in this episode. But before we get into a deeper discussion on can I change, what is the relevance of this to the year in review? Well, my answer to this is very simple. For many years, what I have been doing at the end of every year is doing a deep introspection along with my family in terms of how the year has been, what were the events of the year, what were the milestones, what did we go through, what are the plans for the next year, what can we change, what can we be happy about as we take a break and get ready to welcome the new year. After doing this for several years, in about 2016 or so, I started doing this on my personal website and I started writing about how the year has been, and that practice has grown from a single article in 2016 to a 20-part series of year in review in 2020. This year, I'm challenging myself further to say, can I do this in video format, 22 episodes, one each day? But let me tell you the benefit of doing this. The benefit is that it forces you to get into an introspection mode. Look back at what has been achieved, what has been done. If something has not been achieved even though you were targeting it, what were the reasons, what are the impediments, how can you overcome all of this in the coming year? But the question is New Year the only time when you do this introspection, or can you do it at any other time? This reminds me of something that I read about 25 years ago. This is Anthony Robbins' famous book called Awaken the Giant Within, and it had a chapter called Can Change Happen in an Instant? And it spoke about some neuroassociative conditioning, etc. I will not get into the psychology, that is for some other time. But the short point is that change can happen in any instant when you decide. So it does not need to be New Year, it does not need to be your birthday, it does not need to be any other milestone. It could be just any moment. So let that moment be right now, today itself. But why we typically do it at the end of the year is that it gives us an opportunity as everybody is recoiling and taking a break during this time of the year. Now, let's dive deeper into what Google believes people were looking for in terms of the Can I Change theme. We'll break this up into three parts. The first part is what is it that people want to change? The second part is what is the outcome that people want to achieve as a result of this change? And the third part is how to make this change, how to operationalize it. So let's first examine what is it that people want to change under the umbrella theme of Can I Change? Now, if I ask you the question, what is it that you want to change? You will probably have a long laundry list of things you want to change. You may want to change the world, you may want to change the government, you may want to change the way political leaders behave, you may want to change anything and everything around you. Thankfully, that is not what people have been looking for on Google. Some of the top search terms were around the themes of can I change myself? Can I change my outlook? Can I change my life? Can I change my careers? Can I change my style? So if you look at all of these five, they are inward looking. They are not outward looking. Even though it may seem obvious that you can only change yourself, you cannot really control and change others. I think as we are doing this introspection about what we want to change, there are two guiding principles that emerge from this. The first one is go inside out. If you want to change something around you, start from within and see what is it that you can do. The second principle which is related, is the principle of controllable versus uncontrollable. So focus on changing what is controllable in your hands and not so much worrying about things that are not controllable in your hands. Now, what is controllable and uncontrollable? Sometimes there is a fine line between the two. Of course, you will have to examine this with the lens of the right sort of time frame. So something may be controllable, changeable in the space of 10 years, but may not be controllable or changeable maybe in the next week or so. If you're thinking in the action mode, then your focus needs to be squarely on things that are controllable within the context of that time frame. So having understood what is it that people want to change, let's look at the second aspect of what is the outcome that people are expecting as a result of this change. So the search terms that were on top of the Google year-end search report around this theme of what people want to achieve through this change were things such as, can I level up? Can I evolve? Can I create change? But the biggest one for me was the last but not the least. Can I be original? If you need to achieve something, if you need to go beyond, just like a spring, just like a rubber band, you need to take a step back, use the advantage of that recoil and bounce back with more energy. That's how you can propel forward. If you don't take a step back, then you will not be able to move ahead in a transformational sort of way. You may move incrementally, but you will not be able to move exponentially. Which is why it's very important in this sense that people are not just looking at evolving or leveling up or creating change. They are looking at being original, which essentially means that you want to go back to the origin of who you were. And what is that origin? That origin could be examined at two levels. One is origin in terms of our species, in terms of humanity. What is it that people's lifestyles were in the ancient times, in the medieval times, and how, while embracing modernity, we have moved away from our origins. This may be too abstract and once again not very controllable in the hands of most people, unless you are somebody who's a crusader working for climate change, working towards SDGs or something of that sort. For most people, the interpretation of this originality means that you want to go back to your individual origin, which is, what were you as a child? Now, this may sound like a very simplistic thing, but I've done workshops and exercises with people where I've helped them recollect the memories of their childhood and overlay that on top of their current lives and help figure out where those gaps are and what is it that they really truly are from within. If they chase goals and targets which are aligned to their original self, the probability of success is going to be much higher. More importantly, you are going to much more enjoy that journey rather than trying to emulate the journey of somebody else or being bitten by the FOMO bug, the fear of missing out bug. So personally for me, it's very heartening to see that people are searching for this term, can I be original? I have several examples from my own life about how I went back to my childhood or how, while my son was growing up, we did things together in the field of programming and robotics that helped me find myself. I've spoken about it in the previous episode on Wordle, where I speak about not just playing games but developing games. So you can go check that out. In addition, I'll also put some other links in the description to podcasts that I have done where I've spoken about parenting and leadership and the interlinkage between the two and how we can evolve, level up, create change as we try to be original. And this brings us to the most important section, the how to section. Once again, if we look at what is it that people were trying to implement, here are some things that came to mind. How to be spontaneous, how to be fearless, how to find my passion, how to start again. And there were a few more, but I'll come to that. Let's just take a breather here for a second. And if you look at these four that I just spoke about, you will realize one thing. They are all directly related to what we were just speaking about, being original. Once you are original, once you go back to your childhood, you are able to do all of these things. You are able to start again. You become fearless because a child is nothing but curious and fearless. So you connect with your authentic self and you have nothing to fear about. Spontaneity comes naturally as it would to a child. And finding your passion is not an issue at all. And even if you do not remember, you can ask people around you who spent time with you when you were a child as to how you were, what your interests were, what did you enjoy doing, and you will be able to find your passion somewhere hidden in that maze. It will be a much easier process than to look at what you have been doing over the last couple of years or over the last 5 years, depending on what age or time frame you're looking at. Because those would be things which have been imposed upon you. This imposition starts from middle school itself, where we diverge away from our natural interests, our natural talents, into things that are thrust upon us. So when I speak about childhood here, I'm not talking about the teens. I'm talking about early childhood, about middle school or even pre-middle school. So it will be best if you are able to connect with that version of yourself, and that will help you learn how to do all of these things: how to be fearless, how to be spontaneous, how to start again, how to find my passion. That's one part of the how to section. As I mentioned, there are a few other things that people are looking at, and the biggest one for me there is how to be more positive. Now, people who've interacted with me over all these years have said one thing, that how do you remain so positive? Even when things are falling apart, people have always been amazed by my ability to remain calm and look at the positive side of things. Some of these mental hacks and tips and tricks that I have used in my personal life upon myself to remain and become more positive, I have encapsulated many of these in the form of a book called How to Stay Positive and Productive. So, this book was released right at the beginning of the pandemic in March 2020 itself, when the pandemic and the lockdown was announced, and I realized that people are going to be in a state of negativity and may even get into depression, sitting at home and worrying about the pandemic, the health, and also being cut off from social interaction. One of the things that I did in 22 was also release an updated version of this book, just released in November 2022, where I've added postscripts to each of the chapters to bridge the gap between the mindset shift that was required in March 2020 or during the early stages of the pandemic versus what is required now in the new normal in 23 and beyond. So I will leave the link in the description and you can check it out at your leisure. So those were the three things that we spoke about. What is it that people want to change? What will be the outcome as a result of that change? And thirdly, how to make that change. But if your mind is still stuck on the central theme of can I change, let's take the example of the biggest change that we see in nature around us, which is a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. A caterpillar does not change by trying to become a butterfly. It does not visualize or imagine or manifest what a butterfly is doing and tries to flap its wings because it doesn't have any. What a caterpillar instead does is what is required at the caterpillar stage. So it goes about its business instead of worrying about what it will have to do when it will become a butterfly. In the context of this year in review and this time of the year when we are in that introspection mode, wanting to look back at the previous year, wanting to see what is it that we can change and what is it that we can achieve in the next year, let's keep our execution focus squarely on today. While we visualize tomorrow, while we dream about day after tomorrow, and while we fantasize about a decade from now, what we really need to focus on is execution, and execution can only happen in the present instant. So with that and on a lighter note, let me give you one task to execute. If you've not already done so, please ensure that you subscribe, like and comment and share this video with your network. So that will result in a multiplier effect of change. And if everybody is changing around you, if everybody is in the same boat, the odds are greater that you too will rise up with the rising boats. With that, thank you and see you in the next episode.